Hey everyone, and welcome back to the EdgeVerse TechCast. This is your favorite place for everything NXP software, tools, and enablement. I'm your co-host, Kyle Dando, and today we're shaking things up a little with something different. This is an open mic episode where Bridgette and I go a bit off script to share updates, stories, and maybe even a few surprises.
And I'm Bridgette Stone, your other co-host. Honestly, Kyle, I think this is a great chance for folks to get to know you just a little bit better. You're more than just your dry humor, singing, and obsession with VS Code, right?
Well, time will tell about that, but I think it's fair that we should turn the spotlight on you too. Our listeners probably already like you more than me, but let's just find out if they still do after what we share today.
Deal. And hey, beyond all the tech updates, this is also a chance to talk about some of the other stuff we've been into, like our shared fitness journey. Turns out debugging code and lifting weights both require some serious form.
True. Whether it's our SDKs or our deadlifts, we're all about getting stronger every day. So, fair warning, you might hear a few reps of fitness puns along the way.
All right, Kyle, since this is open mic, I'll hand the mic over to you first. What's been on your mind lately? Anything you want to share with our listeners?
Oh, absolutely. There are just a couple updates I think that the developers listening will really care about. So, this is a great opportunity. First up, the MCUXpresso SDK 25.06 preview just dropped.
Ooh, a preview. Why should the people care about that?
All right, well, that's a good question. So, this preview concept might sound familiar. We actually introduced it way back in our very first episode where Jimmy Chen outlined the architecture of our SDK changes. So, the idea is to give our developers early access to the SDK updates before the final production release. With this 25.06 preview, developers can see over 690 changes from the previous release. And that's a lot of transparency. And it helps these customers assess how these updates might impact their code before things go live.
So it's like a heads up. Test early, plan ahead. But let me ask the obvious. If it's not the production version, why would someone want to even use it?
That's totally fair. We always tell customers don't ship with the preview version, but using it for evaluation and internal testing, that is going to be super helpful for them. So the customer is going to get 2 months of runway to adapt to the changes before the production release hits their stable code base. And it's all about giving our customers a smarter, more agile way to sync up with the NXP software releases.
Ah, right. And I remember Jimmy also mentioned there are two previews for every quarterly release, correct?
Absolutely. So there are 2 previews that precede the quarterly release. That cadence makes it real easy for developers to stay in step with us. It's almost like continuous integration, but for our embedded SDK.
Very, very cool. Okay, so that's update one. What else you got on your list?
All right. Well, the second update is somewhat aligned with that, but it kind of ties in Visual Studio Code. So this is an update that fixes a problem that a lot of our developers have been waiting for. In the last release, people had trouble creating freestanding projects in Visual Studio Code using our new GitHub SDK. Basically, they were forced to build whatever projects they wanted inside of the NXP repo, which doesn't really work well for most use cases.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing some feedback on that. Not ideal.
True. But again, we are making changes that are going to improve our customers' experience. So this is just a growing pain. But with the new 2506 preview that we just talked about, it's fixed. So again, developers can now evaluate and create freestanding projects wherever they want. It's a huge improvement, both for their workflow and the flexibility.
And how do they access the fix?
Well, if they're using VS Code, all they have to do is select the 2506 preview from the repository versions that are shown in the dropdown when they import repository. Or if the listener is a command line savvy user, they can just make sure that they check out the 2506 preview branch. And then they'll have the ability to run the project wizard in VS Code, or they can use our West extension command to export the project to a freestanding location.
Very cool. So it sounds like this update is packed with community-driven improvements as well.
It is. It is. For example, another fix just coming up in our next preview for preview number 2, just 60 days after being reported, it shows the users that we're able to get their feedback and quickly get the fixes out to them. And this is again about a freestanding project, the ability to now add custom board files or maybe a custom configuration file. That had been an oversight. Now what they're going to be able to do is select which files they want in that freestanding project, even some of the more board and clock specific files. It's a great example, again, of how this preview is showing the customers how they can get quick fixes from our responsive software team.
Love it. And nice callback to our earlier episodes too. SDK, VS Code, you're stitching this together.
Thanks. And as they love to say, I love it when a plan comes together. So now that we've had fun with our first updates from me, I think it's fair that I turn the mic over to you. Go, here's the open mic, and I hope you're ready for the power.
Always. So lately I've been spending time in the application code hub, and let me tell you, the pace of updates has been amazing. We're at 163 entries. It's become such a rich resource for developers with new examples dropping daily that actually helps you get real world projects kicked off right away. We've launched 11 new Freedom boards with over a dozen coming soon. Wink, wink.
All right. Well, do you have any favorites that you've been seeing come down the pipe?
Well, of course. I've been borderline obsessed with the Freedom MCXN 947 board. It's hands down one of my favorite Freedom boards so far. Not only does it feature dual Cortex M33 cores running up to 150 megahertz, but it also includes NXP's EIQ Neutron NPU, in addition to other on-chip accelerators, which makes it a great fit for AI/ML workloads, especially TinyML applications.
All right. You and your Freedom boards. I should have seen that coming when I asked you what you're most interested in.
Hey, what can I say? It's a powerhouse. And you know I'm a sucker for anything that can lift heavy. This board's basically the barbell of embedded development, built for performance, balanced for efficiency, and always ready to flex.
So what you're saying is this board spots itself.
Exactly. USB-C, CAN-FD, I3C, Ethernet. It's got industrial grade connectivity gains, plus support for Arduino, Microbus, and PMOD add-ons. So it's super flexible for all your project routines. And yes, it pairs beautifully with the application code hub projects. That's like your training program.
Okay. I'm convinced. I love the Freedom. So it sounds like a pretty strong platform in every sense.
Totally. It even comes with an onboard MCU link debugger, Flex IO for LCD control, and dual bank flash so you can upgrade firmware without downtime. For developers building industrial edge or ML focused apps, this board does not skip leg day.
And naturally, I already know because you're so prepared that you're planning to bring on a special guest to go a little bit deeper into this specific application.
Don't you know it? Consider this your teaser. We'll dive into more of this tech in an upcoming episode.
Awesome. All right. Well, another strong node to our past themes, you were able to tie in both the SDKs, VS Code, the application code hub, and now the Freedom MCXN 947. So look at us staying on brand, and I guess we could say staying swole.
Exactly. Code strong, Kyle.
So now let's put the open mic down, Bridgette. That was a nice way to revisit our past episodes. But as I said at the beginning, I think our listeners are wanting more. Bridgette, I think they deserve more.
Kyle, should I be afraid?
Nah. Trust me, Bridgette. Trust me. I think we should spend the next half of this podcast allowing the listeners to get to know a little bit more about us. All right. So, Bridgette, what's one thing that's shaped you into the strong, persistent, and wildly creative Marcom manager that I've had the pleasure of co-hosting this TechCast with?
You know, I've always been a naturally curious person. I was the kid who actually liked school, into everything from science to sports, constantly asking questions, probably too many questions, and trying to figure out how the world worked. I was definitely the kid with my hands up on every roller coaster ride, all in, all the time, even if I didn't know exactly where the ride was heading. The same spirit carried into my career. I also have a sister with Down syndrome, and growing up with her taught me a lot about communication, about empathy, and finding different ways to connect with people. I think that helped shape how I listen, how I explain things, and how I see the world. Later, I studied psychology in college, still not sure what I wanted to do, but fascinated by how people think and how decisions are made. And that turned out to be surprisingly useful in tech marketing. So it's really been a mix of curiosity, connection, a little bit of behavioral science that brought me here. Now I get to take that complex technology and help people actually relate to it. And honestly, it's been a really amazing ride.
Okay, well, first off, I knew you were hands up on the roller coaster kind of girl. That checks out. I know. You're the person who signs up for a challenge before asking what it is, just like co-hosting this crazy TechCast. And somehow you always seem to stick the landing. I didn't have any idea about your sister, but I'll tell you, your sister's very lucky to have such a great sister. You do have this gift for connecting with people, no matter their background or how technical the topic is. In psychology, well, that just explains so much. No wonder you're so good at talking tech marketing. With that background, you're basically always a part-time therapist, part-time translator, and a full-time hype squad. All right, now it's your turn to grill me. So please keep it semi-gentle. I didn't stretch before this episode.
All right, so I got a fun one for you. Let's say the whole tech thing didn't work out for you. What would alternate universe Kyle be doing right now? And yes, you do have to answer.
Well, I still have my fingers crossed, Bridgette, on my career. No, this is a great question. Being a psychology major, you'll probably agree that most of our listeners pose the same question to themselves weekly. But honestly, for as long as I can remember, I have always loved running. And I don't just mean running to the store, I mean really long distance running. And I am definitely no sprinter. If I needed to pivot my career from technology, I would absolutely, with no doubt, be a high school cross country coach. And I think I'd maybe teach high school math on the side if they'd let me. I've been very fortunate to have amazing coaches in my career. When I ran competitively in high school and in college at Purdue, boiler up, I found that I improved my mental performance way more than my running times. I just crave to pass on the same guidance and wisdom to the young kids that I see today. And I guess I have a love for teaching, which explains one of the reasons I've always gravitated toward technical marketing and training content. Between us, my username for most everything in life is Purdue Runner. I think it defines so much more of who I am. Is that personal enough, Bridgette?
That's honestly so awesome, Kyle. I love that. You're all about endurance, mindset, and mentorship. It totally tracks with how you approach tech too. Always playing the long game, helping people level up, including your co-host over here. So thank you. But also Purdue Runner, that might just beat my freedom obsession.
True.
Well, Kyle, I think we've officially proven that when you hand us a mic with no script, we're going to run with it.
Yeah, like I said before, we've done a pretty solid job of covering the SDK previews. We discussed the excellent Freedom boards, and we continue to let our listeners know about the magic of the Application Code Hub. And you know what? I think it was great that we got a little personal because I think our listeners wanted to hear that kind of information. And I'd call that a pretty solid flex.
Totally agreed. Hopefully this gave our listeners a better feel for who we are behind the tech, curious minds, code nerds, and apparently part-time weightlifters.
Yes. Remember, always lift heavy code, use strong security, and don't skip leg day.
Especially if it's a dual core debug build.
So until next time, hands up, hands on tight, and enjoy the ride through the EdgeVerse.